Yo, 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 welcome back to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions, and hustles. My name's Chris Fairlong. I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. And in this episode, episode 61, super thrilled to introduce you to Trang Nguyen, who's my guest for this week. Now, I've known Trang for probably about 5 or 6 years or so, more so from Instagram. We haven't actually been able to meet in person just yet, but Trang brings a whole bunch of different talents and skills, I guess, ranging from physiotherapy, from strength conditioning, and also in a background of running and even doing triathlon. Now, Trang, she combines, I guess, mindset, life, and all this performance together in helping people achieve their fullest potential and helping people transform their lives. In this episode, essentially, that's what we chat about. We chat about the ability to perform at our peak and to thrive with excellence in all that we're trying to achieve in life, and actually finding what that, I guess, North Star or what it is that we want in life and how we can work towards it. We dive into the reality of, I guess, the challenge of discovering what that looks like, but also the challenge that progress brings, but also the rewards that it brings in the longer term too. We discuss through the breakdown of what does it actually mean to have alignment, and what does it actually take to reach this potential, and what are the steps that you can start today or take today in order to move forward in the right direction. Absolutely awesome episode. Really enjoyed having this conversation with Trang. Let's dive into it. Welcome, Trang, to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to having this chat with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. And, full transparency to those listening, it's like we've known each other, like we've kind of stalked each other on Instagram and socials for like 4 or 5, it could even be longer, but quite a while. And it's great to be finally having to actually meet you just the other week when we first had a meetup. And then here we are, now we're doing it. So I am so grateful because watching your journey, or as I said, following on Instagram and whatnot has been really encouraging for me. And I know you inspire and have been probably a big inspiration to so many, across different realms of, running and just performance and I guess probably life in general. So kudos, you're doing a good job.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Yeah, but what you said before is so true. That's pretty much how we met on Instagram. We've known of each other for a long time. And I keep joking about how social media, especially Instagram, is like the dating app for friends these days.
Yeah.
Because quite a few of my new friends who I've met, and they're all beautiful. They're so grateful to meet these friends like later in life. And it's been through social media. We've gotten to know each other, and then we've met each other in person.
Yeah. I think you said it. It's kind of like, you date each other first on Instagram and then you actually go out and catch up for a coffee. But it's true. Like, you don't know who's out there, and it's always weird when people slide into your DMs anyway, because you're like, oh, who's reaching out to me or whatever. But that aside, look, I'm so grateful to have you in my circles, and let's talk about you. And I've already done a bit of an introduction, but who are you and what are you all about?
So the best way to start is to introduce myself, which I know you already have. So for anyone who doesn't already know me, I'm Trang. To describe what I do at a very high level, I say that I am a high performance and mindset coach. So that's quite broad, because ultimately my mission and my vision is to help people achieve their greatest potential with purpose in their career and in their life. And that is really broad, but ultimately why that's so important to me is because when people can achieve their potential with purpose, then they can thrive in their lives. And ultimately that's what everyone seeks in their life. They seek to thrive. And when individuals are thriving, then humanity can thrive. And when humanity thrives, then the whole world can thrive. And that's ultimately my vision, is to contribute to that thriving world during my lifetime. So then I work with individuals to help them achieve that. So I do have a diverse background. I'm trained as a physiotherapist, running coach, strength and conditioning coach. And then I also do mindset and life coaching as well. So a broad way to work with people, but really it hits all the different pillars required for someone to achieve high performance and to thrive in their lives.
Yeah, and you'd probably find that a lot of people will have different elements in their life where if they're thriving in that, it helps them thrive, across the rest of their life. If we think about running, because you've obviously got a running background, for me, like if I wasn't running, my day would feel a bit low, because that's one of the highlights that I love, and that helps me just get into the groove, helps me win the day, especially when you do it in the morning. You've gone for your run, you're back before breakfast, you've done your run. It's like, well, worst case, you've still had a good day because you've won the morning. But
Yeah.
thank you for that intro. And there's a lot there. And I think there's probably people thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or think, oh, that's a bit fluffy, or there's so much there. But I think if we step back a little bit and actually, how did it even come to this? Because, you alluded to that you have done quite a few different professions and studied a few different things, and you've got, quite a broad background yourself. But to go from high school to then studying to then whether it's working full time to actually then starting your own business, and now actually doing this as a coaching and helping people become their full potential, like that's quite an aggressive journey and change. And I know it hasn't been over a long period of time. Like it's probably only been over 6-7 years, if I'm correct.
Yeah, just over that. So I graduated, from school when I was 18 years old, as most people do. And that's where I went and jumped straight into uni and like coaching. So I went straight into studying physiotherapy at uni. And then I did my first personal training course and finished that when I was 19 years old. So I jumped straight into it. I was in that world of sport. I was in that world of fitness, of that health. Allied health. So while I was studying for 4 years, I was doing personal training. I then started to niche down into strength and conditioning coaching for runners, because that's what I like to do. I liked to run. And that was my evolution in my own personal journey that I then translated into, a job. I was doing what I love to do, work with runners for their strength and conditioning. And then got my running coach certification as well. So I was doing that for quite some time, all 6-7 years or so.
Wow.
But then over the journey, what I found, and I know that this is something that we'll go into more later on as well, I really started to go on my own journey of development. And through observation of my clients, I started to notice a few things. So what I noticed at the start, you're smiling because I know you've gone through
it's
this
relatable
process yourself as well. Yeah. So what I noticed was in my work, when I was working with clients at the start, it was all about telling them what to do, right? So I was telling them physically what to do in personal training, in the running and strength coaching. And that worked well because sometimes people simply need the tools and the knowledge and the resources, right? But what I found at a certain point was I could give two clients the exact same tools, the exact same program, and they could get different results. One person could get really great results, and the other might not actually get their optimal results. So then from there, I started to notice that was where the mindset aspect came in. Like you give them the tools and the resources, Google and the internet can be available to everyone. But if someone is in an unresourceful mindset, if someone is feeling disempowered, then they're not going to actually utilize those resources to their best ability. So then that's when I started to incorporate more mindset unofficially into my coaching. So just during personal training sessions, even on online coaching, I'd be talking to clients about how you can optimize your state of mind to get the best results. So this was where it was going for quite a while. For quite a few years, it was a combination of physical coaching and physical focus. So focusing on taking action, focusing on doing the work, and mindset as well. And this was the same for my own development, my own journey. I was focusing on doing the work and then all the positive thinking, all the motivational thinking. But then it got to a point where, and I know you've experienced this as well, Chris, where I got to what people might call a quarter life crisis.
They're real.
Yeah, they are real. And it's funny because I hadn't actually heard of that as much as a midlife crisis. I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't recognize it. But what I have now realized in hindsight was I had always been a high achiever. I'd always achieved success, which is what generally happens when you have action combined with the mindset, you'll get success. but I was still missing something else. I was still missing this greater connection to what is this all for? And that was a deep like hole that I went down. You know, what's the meaning of all this? What's the purpose of all this? Like, what's the point of all this, right? And I went down that deep hole. And then I started to notice the same in clients. You know, they would talk about the same things, successful clients who were like, I still don't feel completely fulfilled. I still feel like something's missing. And also looking at the larger scale of celebrities, of extremely successful individuals who were still unhappy, who were still miserable. Like, I know, you know, there's so many celebrities or so many successful people out there who we can all look at, who are great examples of have all the money in the world, have all the success in the world, driven individuals, but they're still unhappy and they're still missing that third thing, which is where I started to realize it wasn't just about the mind. It wasn't just about the body, like taking action and physical work. It was also about the heart as well. It was also about connecting the emotion and the spirit, if you want to look at it in that way, into the heart, and then aligning all of that. So the body, the mind, and the heart became the three pillars of how I coach people, of what I personally focused on. And that's why I decided I couldn't just focus on the body anymore. I couldn't just focus on sport and health. If I wanted to create a true impact on the world and have and contribute to thriving individuals and a thriving humanity and a thriving planet, then I had to also incorporate the mind and the heart. And that's why I then expanded. I rebranded my business to what's now aligned to performance. And now that's what I primarily focus on.
Love it. And there's so much, and that's what we're going to dive into. But one thing, just to replay all that really stuck out to me, is how you said, you gave, the same tools and resources to two different people, and you got different outcomes. And it's so true. I guess it really does come down to that mindset and willpower, because you think about it, there's so many diets, there's so many ways of people can make a difference or change their life. And it's on the internet. Everyone's talking about it, right? You and me in some elements, and then everyone's giving their way of, if you just do this, this is how you'll get it. But if the person isn't switched on to the mindset of like, this is what they want to be able to achieve where they want to be, then it's not going to happen, right? And it's crazy how it does take that clicking moment for people to actually then take that action and make that difference. And usually we'll have that hindsight of like, oh, I wish we started this, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. But going through that journey, which obviously you've now gone through, and you mentioned it yourself, with the hindsight, you think, it all makes more sense now. But it's a beautiful, I guess it's a beautiful experience to go through that, to understand now holistically what you're all about, what do you want, and now to be able to help others achieve that, right? And I think regardless if people are wanting to coach or not, when you go through that experience, you don't have to then go coach people to do it, but everything you do should then represent what you're doing, and other people will see that difference. And I think that's what shines through people that have gone. I mean, that's what shines through you, definitely, which is one of the main reasons why following your journey and reaching out to you now to have these conversations, it's so important, because it just makes so much sense and it resonates, and it shines and reflects from you. So it's an awesome journey, and that's what we're going to jump into, right? So
and that's why as well, like that's why I actually now reframe quarter life crisis as quarter life awakening. Because that's what it is. Like, yes, you go through the storm and you go through the confusion and the, oh my gosh, I don't know where I'm at and what I'm doing and where to go next. But on the other side of that is always an awakening. There's always that realization, the integration of everything that you have, all the information and all the knowledge and who you've become, all that you've accumulated over the years, to then be like, this is actually where I want to go. Now, I've spent my whole life climbing this mountain because it's always been a fast-paced world and it's always about getting to the next place. I've spent my whole life climbing this mountain, but wait, I need to actually climb a different mountain. And that's the awakening. That's the freedom. So despite it being painful at times, and despite it being, a bit challenging, a quarter life crisis, it leads to the freedom on the other side, the fulfillment on the other side, to actually climb the right mountain and finish your life on the right mountain.
That's it. And the beauty about this is, like, whether you're young or old, it's not too late either, because, whether you're having quarter life crisis or midlife crisis or whatever, it's kind of like, the only way I can play this back is, it took me longer than, 8-7 years to figure it out. But it was after working full time for about 7 years, 8 years, knowing that I had all these other ideas. It's kind of like, that's how long it took me to finally make the click. I had the ideas, but to actually make the click and then go all in, it took me that time, right? But now it's kind of like, okay, now I get to start from zero again and get to remake, well, I guess to now create where I want to be, what I want, and what that looks like. Whether it takes me 1 year, 5 year, 7 years, or 10 years, it's irrelevant, because it's actually still such a small amount of time compared to, the broader picture of, our lives, from an average lifespan perspective. And I think we get scared that it's too late to make a change, or it's too late to do anything, because whether you're 25 or 30, I mean, that is a bit scary, but you look back now and you think, oh, where's the last 10 years gone? Like, it takes a while to get there, but once you're there, you're like, oh, I wish I had started it, because if I had just done that over that long period of time, imagine what the results would be. And I love it. I love it. So the question I have to ask you then, and it's more so probably for the audience too, is what does it actually mean to thrive with aligned performance? And I'm not talking about your brand, but like when you're talking about, having that alignment, what does that really mean? And I guess in short, how can we discover it? And I know you can probably talk hours and hours on this, so we'll have to keep it simple, stupid, but just so people can get some sense of, I guess, understanding.
Yeah, for sure. So aligned performance, thriving with aligned performance is showing up in a way, performing in your life in a way that is in alignment to multiple different things. So at the highest level, what I mentioned before, making sure that you're climbing the right mountain, right? So that you don't spend your whole life climbing a mountain and get to the top. That's wrong. So aligning your actions and your job and the way that you show up to your deepest, truest why, your purpose. And this some people are clear of, and they are simply not actioning that. And that's where there's that clash, and that's where there is that misalignment, and that causes more problems for them than anything else. And some people aren't actually aware of their purpose yet. And in a way as well, I've got to say, it's kind of like trying to find the perfect soulmate. It's not like there's just one purpose out there for you. You've got to find that purpose. But deep inside of you, there is something that your heart calls for. Something
like
that
yearns
you are
for.
Something that is meaningful to you. But maybe you buried it and you haven't connected to it, because your life is just go all the time, and you're responding to everyone else's needs, your boss's needs, your family's needs, and you've buried that, but it's inside of you somewhere. So you've got to connect to that. It's also like showing up and performing in your life, in your career, in a way that's aligned to your values. So once again, being aware of your values and being in alignment with those values. I think a lot of the time people don't show up in alignment to their values. So they might value one thing. For example, they might value discipline. They want to be disciplined. They want to be healthy. Maybe they want to, stop eating junk food. They want to stop smoking, but due to habit, they are snoozing the alarm in the morning. They're not going to the gym. They're still smoking or eating junk food every day. And that's what eats them from the inside out. It eats them up slowly. At the start, it's just like, I'm going to just brush this off. And then I do it again a day and for another day, and then for another week. But then it starts to eat you from the inside out. It starts to eat you up slowly. And that's where people's unfulfillment, like that feeling, grows over time until it gets to a point where you're like, how did I even get here? So, alignment to purpose, alignment to values, and then ultimately alignments between the body, mind, and heart. So body, taking action and putting in the work, actually doing things in life. That's the only way to get results in life. Is you got to actually do something. You got to put in the work. You got to have that discipline, having the mind, the mental state, the mindset that supports and aligns to the action that you want to take as well. And then when you have those two pillars, then you're gonna achieve success, which is generally the first step for someone to be able to have access to what they want in their life, the financial abundance, the meaning in their life when they achieve success, but then also aligning that to their purpose as well, aligning that to their values and what is meaningful for them in this world. And then only once those 3 pillars are achieved, then they can truly thrive, achieve aligned performance and thrive. And as soon as one pillar is missing, then they'll be just one step short of thriving.
Out of balance as well. And I'm picturing in my head like a 3-circle Venn diagram, and in that middle is kind of like that sweet spot. And, and the way I like to look at this is, and you probably heard the term, is like your North Star, like where you're heading towards, right? And I want to ask from that. And so like there's a lot there, right? And like I know obviously this is what you do for a living and help people get through those. But is there like a question we can ask ourselves of like how to kind of figure out, well, if someone's listening to this right now and they think, that's great. Like, how do I deal through all this, right? And my camera's going out of, right? How do I deal through all this? And where can I even ask? For me, like, sometimes if I lose track of what I'm trying to do, it's kind of like, well, what can I control? Can I control this versus am I happy, right? And then from that, I can work out, do I need to be doing more? And it only comes back on, the onus comes back on me. But if I can be doing more, but I'm happy with where I am, maybe I don't have to be doing more, right? Because then you start to play like, not just trying to prove that, you have to be the biggest and the greatest, but I'm just being the best for myself. So from your perspective, is there, something that we can ask ourselves to kind of pulse check or maybe help us trigger, maybe we do need to make a change?
Yeah. I think, if there's one question that you can ask yourself is what you mentioned, Chris, check in with where you're at the moment. Am I happy with where I'm at? Like, how am I feeling day to day? There's a process that I use with my clients, and it's quite a deep, expansive process that I build my clients up to for them to get this clarity. And that is actually working backwards. Because sometimes it's actually challenging to sit here and be like, all right, where do I see myself in the next 10, 20, 30 years? But working backwards can be a huge eye opener. It can lead to a huge awakening for people. So actually going through a process of asking yourself and going deeper into like visualization and meditating on this, on the last day of my life, on the last day when I know that, I'm about to leave this planet and I've only got so many breaths left for this day, if I look back over my life, what is it in order for me to feel at peace to leave the earth? What is it that I need to achieve? What is it that I need to become? What impacts do I need to have on this planet? And it sounds morbid and everything, but the reality is it's going to happen, right? Like, that's one of the inevitables for all living beings. So working backwards and starting from there, and that's what actually gave me that awareness. That's actually what gave me a huge eye-opening moment where I was like, I have no other option but to pursue this right now. I'm not going to wait 10 years because that's 10 years lost. I'm going to do that now. So I actually went through that process myself, then, changed everything within weeks because I was like, this, like nothing else matters now. But that's quite big, right? For most people, maybe a good place to start is even creating a little bit of space every single day to listen to yourself, to hear yourself, to hear your heart, what it actually is calling for. Because it's really hard to hear that and to connect to that when as soon as you wake up, you're scrolling through social media, then you've got the radio on, then you go to work where your boss is telling you off for X, Y, and Z, or your colleagues are asking you to do things, and then you come home and it's Netflix and it's just more messaging. It's just really hard to
never stops.
Disconnect. It's challenging to disconnect. So you've got to create that space, just a little bit of time every single day to talk to yourself.
I love that. And I think the one thing I want to make clear to everyone is, like we do talk about this, to do this, do that. And it is easier said than done, but there has to be a compromise, right? If you want change, you have to be able to make time for that change, right? Whether it is, as you said, whether it's that small amount of time, whether it's the 30 minutes, or maybe you just want to read more. It's like, well, you have to dedicate 30 minutes. You can't say, I don't have time for it. Well, you have to make time. If you want the change, you need to be willing to make that compromise. And I think the good part about this is once you get some sense of, I guess, it's like the snowball effect, right? Once you get that moving of a routine, you start to pick up and you gain traction. And that's when you become more motivated, because you start to see, it's like when you start running, the first time you run, it's like, oh, this is horrible, right? But then once you start to build some momentum, some confidence, and you didn't actually have to walk during a run, you realize, maybe I could do it faster next time, right? And that's the natural, ease into running. And then we tend to become competitive with ourselves and stuff, and which is a great way to get into it, because then you're building a healthy routine to see where you can take it. And obviously then you have to, work through that to the goals and to where you want to take it to. But I think the other part of it is, it's a journey. It's not an overnight success. You've literally just said, think about where you want to be. You were talking about deathbed, but you can take it and think, where do you want to be in 5 years, right? And I know a lot of people think about this going into the careers. That's what I did. I'm like, I want to be a manager by this time. And, how long is that on average going to take? And what do I need to do to get there? And you get there and you're like, that's great. But then, and that kind of comes back to that quarter life crisis of like, you achieve all that and then you don't know where to go. So understanding what are the steps to get to your first goal, to your next goal, and that North Star, I think is very important. And I think it was when we chatted the other day, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was someone else, but it's that quote from Bill Gates. It's like we overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. And I've loved that. I've been resonating with that so much over the last, week and a half or even 2 weeks, because it is so true, because we want everything now, but that's not reality. Like, it's not going to happen now, right? The only thing you can do now is start to work towards that bigger change. And, as we said, this has taken for you a journey of changing things up, having to pivot your businesses that you've touched on. And now you're at a spot where you've been doing Align Performance for, I think you said it's a year and a half or almost 2 years, is it?
No, not even.
That's
1 year.
Yeah, 1 year. That's right. And which, it's only early days, but like, imagine from 5 years, 10 years, and I'm sure you've got a bit of a goal and plan and roadmap to where you want to take that. But it's exciting because now it's really, you are climbing that right mountain and you get to build it the way you want. So it's really, I think these conversations can be quite overwhelming, but at the same time, really eye-opening for a lot of people. I don't want to scare people, but maybe we'll take it to the next level. And, it's kind of the next point I wanted to discuss with you, which is, what does it actually require? Or what does it require for us to actually reach our potential? And, one thing that I think, resonates with me the most is, I think, obviously mindset, but we have to leave a lot of things at the door. Like, I'll just quickly share a story. It's like when I went on my weight loss journey, I was doing a lot of workouts with my best mate. He was my PT at the time. And, we were, I think we were doing it twice a week, good hour and a half, like full on HIIT workouts and losing weight. It was good, but like, it just wasn't enough kind of thing. Nothing was really getting me over that edge. And, we continued having conversations, and it kind of came down to the conversation around, well, what am I eating? What's your diet? And, you kind of brush it off. And then eventually it got to the point, because he was getting frustrated because I'm not seeing the results that he knew I was possible of having. And he said, dude, the reason why you're still fat, like that's what he said, and obviously being my best mate, there's some level of, love there, but he's like, it's because you haven't changed your diet. And then, I obviously took that quite beatenly, but at the same time, it's like, crap, he's right, and it was at that time I had to then leave. Well, I'm going to say leave the ego at the door. But at the same time, I wanted to then go prove to him and to myself that, no, I can do this. And I had to change the mindset. I had to change, okay, I'm going to do this. This is why I'm doing it. And, changing that whole perspective. But that aside, from your perspective, what does it take us to do? Like, where do we even start with that? Because, you said you had to go through this whole process of actually having this realization of all the things that you aren't aligned with, all these things that, aren't working out. And then you actually now have to kind of start again, or you have to rediscover it. So, what does it require?
I love the story that you just shared, Chris, because that's exactly the line of thinking that I have. A lot of it has to do with the ego. And yeah, we can talk about, you got to have courage and all of that to be able to to be able to create this life that you desire and just create this life that you know you deserve. But ultimately that even the courage aspect, that comes down to the ego. So the ego can actually show up in multiple different ways. So I think the most common understanding of the ego is like that person who has this unhealthy sense of importance, that they think that they're the shit. Oh, I don't know if we're meant to swear on here.
That's all right.
they think that they're, you know, the best, and they have this need to be superior and better and more, right? And that can be a problem. And for most people, it's not actually necessarily so obvious like that. But even the little things, like people who might have that underlying sense of, oh, I already know this attitude.
That's
so, you know, reading things or learning things or even getting advice. And it's like, oh, I already know this. So then, you know, walls go up and shuts that off as a possibility for growth. And they're very small things like that, right? Like, you know, the sense of not being a student anymore and being like, yep, well, I'm where I am now, so I don't need to continue to be a student. So it can be very subtle like that, you know, just slight arrogance.
Ways of thinking almost, right? And I think sometimes it's things that we don't even realize, you know, because, and I'm not blaming anyone, but sometimes on how you're brought up, right? You know, your background, your cultural things, you know, the things that you weren't allowed to do at home and things like that, right? You know, you've been conditioned in these ways, and, you know, everyone's just trying to do their best in terms of teaching their kids or whatever, but it will be different for everyone, you know. And I think for me, I've had to really open my eyes to realize, well, I don't know what I don't know, right? And who am I to say that I know it all? And that's been a struggle, especially being, you know, a solopreneur now, and, you know, taking a chance and doing everything myself. You think, oh no, I've got this, but then learning, you have to ask for help. You have to be able to get a fresh perspective, zoom out, and have someone else tell it to you in a different perspective, or tell it to you real, because we get stuck on our heads. And if our head is a box and that's all we know, there's another big whole wide world out there, right? That's it, especially with money. I think money is a good example that might resonate with people of this. Is like, you know, when you get to being an adult, you know, all your ideas around money, majority of that has come from, you know, either your family, you know, at school, which there's a lack of it taught at school, and then, you know, your circles, you know, who you've surrounded yourself with. And that's how you do your money, whether it's budgeting or lack of budgeting, your perception of, you know, debt, or your perception of investing, your perception of buying real estate, or just the way you spend credit cards. And it's really interesting because we get so hooked on that. And then when you hear it from someone else, you think, no, that's wrong. But, and then you get frustrated when they're being more successful, because like, how they're more successful, but look, they're not doing what I'm doing. And I know the right way, right? And it really does come down to the ego in that part. But okay. So
and there's also like that's one way that the ego can show up, like, you know, a little bit of that arrogance, but also the opposite as well. So like how I see the ego is, it's also your sense of self. It's also your identity. So even the person who is shy, who is quiet, who is not necessarily putting themselves out there due to fear of failure, fear of judgment, they're also being run by the ego. So real deep attachment to their identity and how they look, right? And that can hold people back as well. You know, that fear of failure, not wanting to put themselves out there and do something that might be different relative to how they've always been known. And that's also the ego aspect that needs to be left at the door, I believe.
Because if you don't ask, you don't know either. Like, or if you don't try, how can you, you know, if you've already made the decision that you're going to fail, but you haven't actually executed anything to see if it will fail, you know, who are you to say, oh, you already know the answer? Because you don't, unless you've done it before, right? So that's I could resonate with that.
So that's a big one, and I'm going to say that's probably more common even than the arrogant ego that would hold people back. I mean, both would be. This is my what I've observed.
Makes sense.
Even people pleasing, because that's actually it seems like someone's so selfless by people pleasing and doing things for other people, but it's actually also coming from the ego, because they want to please other people. They want to be validated. They want to be accepted. That's
Yeah.
part of the ego as well. The sense of self needs that validation, needs that acceptance. And then obviously, when you're always people pleasing, you're going to then do things that aren't actually true to you. You're
Yeah.
going to do things that you don't actually want to be doing or need to be doing. And then that holds people back. So I think the other part that people need to leave at the door is that part of the ego, essentially who you are now, your identity, your sense of self. You got to leave that, let that die metaphorically. You actually need to allow yourself to continue to die again and again in your lifetime, to allow new parts of you to be born, especially if you are, leaving a career that you've been in for 10 years to start a business or to change career paths. Like Chris, you'd know this. You've got to seriously make peace with the part of you that's dying.
It is hard, because sometimes your identity is stuck to that, because that's all you've known, right? Especially if last 10 years. I think if it was like 1 year, and I've always admired people that you see them jump around jobs. One year they're up to the next thing, and and everyone has their ways of how they do things, but I've always looked at that and think, wow, that's crazy. Because for me, I like the structure, the security, the routine, and the consistency, whereas jumping around, it would drive me nuts, right? But and it works in different people's favors, going each way. But I think it's crazy, because if you've invested so long in a long period of time, and I know this because I did it myself, that to then make that change, it's very, very hard to do it. But I think, to your point, if we already have a taste or a view, or can see the grass on the other side, which is actually greener, in this sense. And I know sometimes the grass isn't always greener, but I knew I had to take that risk, because if I didn't, even if the grass wasn't greener, I'm thinking, well, what's the worst case? I fail. I've learned a lot. I won't be regretting it anymore, and I can just get another job. Like really, that's the worst case of it, right? But it can be scary to then think, oh, I've spent so much time building this up, and let me tell people this, you think you're going to ruin, your career, or people say, oh, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, or you're going to lose your reputation. It was about 2 months ago, actually, might have even been one, but, having been out of working full time for almost a year and a half, I haven't thought about going back to work and things like that. That's not really my priority, but it was nice to then I had a previous client reach out. They've moved on to a different place. And they reached out and they said, oh, Chris, I'm looking for someone that can, do this, someone that I can trust, and, be short-term. I know you're doing your own thing, but, are you interested? I just need someone to come in and just take over. And I said, I'm like flattered. I'm like, I feel like I've made it, because, you're stepping away from what you've been doing, and yet someone still comes back to you because they know that you have, what it takes to get that done. And, I had to obviously politely decline and say, really appreciate it, really honored to, feel that love, but, I'm on my own path to do my own thing. And that really helps me then see, no, I've made the right decision. And then to be able to then, when people make that offer, stand with conviction and say, no, thank you, but no, this is where I'm going. But it does take that huge journey to get there. And it's just nice talking about all this, because it makes so much more sense. But it really does come down to that hard choice of like, well, if you want that, then you have to make a change somewhere, and leave those certain things at the door. And that's deep. That's deep. I haven't really thought it out. Like, I mean, everything that you've just explained is everything that I've done, but it's kind of like, when you think about it, it's like, oh, it sounds quite and would you find that it doesn't always be that intense? Like, I mean, you've probably worked with quite a few people, whereas for some, it's really hard to let go, or really hard to make that transition. Whereas others, they probably click a lot quicker, and they're like, this, makes so sense. And they just go all in, because maybe, they're more comfortable with the risk, or they're more comfortable with the change. Do you find that it's different for people like that?
Yeah, definitely. How large your ego is, or your attachment to your sense of self has to do with it. But it's also a habit as well. Like everything in our life, it's habitual, right? So there's a trigger, or there's a cue, and then there's a response. So someone's ability to actually change themselves up and change their identity is actually a habit as well. So if someone has been in the same job for 20 years, if someone has had the same hair for 20
Yep.
years, if someone has,
Yep.
had the same friendship circles and they've really become ingrained and they've trained themselves to not change up their identity often, then that's going to be more challenging for them. And that's actually why I make it a conscious thing for myself to change myself up pretty regularly. So even like hair.
Yep.
So early this year, I got bangs. I haven't had bangs since I was a kid. And that's a pretty drastic change in terms of appearance.
Yep.
And I was like, nah, I'm going to do it because I'm not attached to like how I look. Like if I can't even get a haircut, then where else am I holding myself back in my life from stepping into what my highest self deserves and what my highest self calls for?
This is actually really funny because, and I can't believe we're talking about hair on my podcast, but so, before COVID, obviously, because, we weren't working from home and things, my hair was very clean, slicked back, really done, working corporate, right? You need to look good, wear the suit and tie, whatever. Maybe not the tie, but more just, dress well in the corporate. And now my hair's long like this, I haven't had a haircut literally for 2 years and 1 month.
Yeah, you're rocking it, Chris. And looks great.
Now I've got to the point because people are like, oh, it's getting pretty long. Like, what are you doing with it? And it's become part of the reflection of what I'm doing because I feel free. And that's the representation of it. And now I'm kind of stuck with like, I don't want to see it go because I feel like, I've never had this chance to let it grow that far because, I wouldn't be able to do that working in the, you probably could, but times have changed now. But, and it's kind of a reflection of me of like, from me making that change, it's kind of gone with the flow and, it's grown out. But then at the same time with what you said, it's like making that change, it helps you then spice it up and keep you fresh and keep you honest because, I'm attached to it now because it's resonating. It's kind of like when we see, the nostalgia ads or, things from our childhood and we just light up and we're happy to spend mega dollars on something that reminds us of our childhood because that was when we were the most happy, like it was simple times, right? And it's just crazy how we do become so habitual, as you said, or so attached to those things. But at the same time, habit routine is key. Like that's what helps us get to where we want to be, right? But coming back to once again is making sure we're doing it with the right mindset and doing it in the right way. Because if you're doing it for someone else, not cutting out at anyone that's doing 9 to 5. What I'm saying is if you're doing it, that's not getting to where you want to go, then you're literally building this, I guess, this mindset, this routine, and something that's going to be hard to break, which is an identity towards something you're not. And your little dream, which is this little circle, if anyone's watching, is going to be diminished. And then to build that back out, it's going to take a long time. This is really cool. I'm going full circle with it. I love it.
Yeah, totally. The hair thing, it's such, as you say, it is a symbolic representation of how you are internally. And that's where, even those 3 pillars, body, mind, and heart, people do often focus on the body. So not just physical body, but like physical action, right? Like taking action in your life. And people really focus on that pillar. Oh, if I want to lose weight, I need to go on this diet. If I want to step up my career, I need to be focusing on doing X, Y, and Z work. But ultimately that is often short-lived because everything external, even hair, as you were talking about, is actually symbolic of what shifts and where your internal world is at. And that's why, it's important and you've got to focus on that as well, but it doesn't exist alone. It comes with all those internal shifts of that internal work.
It's all part of the puzzle, right? And I guess, in reflection, it changes over time, but, not to say that my hair is my identity, but it was a symbolic representation of a point in time. And sorry, I'm kind of like playing it all through my head at the moment of like the last, couple of years. And it's just, it's cool, right? And I really hope, this is resonating with those that are listening, because when we get into those situations where we start to see things more clearly, or we've lived through it, and then you click and you think, oh, this makes so much more sense. It helps us just then re-navigate, or I guess accept things better, or appreciate things better as well. So I'm just trying to absorb it all, but continue on what we're trying to chat about. So no, that's really good. So I think we kind of really dived in there, and I'm anxious of time because otherwise we're gonna go down a big rabbit hole. But I think, is there anything else when it, I guess, comes into trying to reach our potential, that we should be avoiding or distracting? But I mean, I know we can get into a lot here, but off the top of your head, is there anything like really high level in terms of we should be aware of this or avoid that, or maybe it's, you just need to have a good self check of, what your ego is saying.
Yeah, in terms of things to avoid, going off what I said earlier, I think noise in your life.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
not just literal noise, but all types of noise. So being
Yeah, that's good.
being on social media all day, or always constantly tuning into the news, constantly checking your
Yeah.
emails, that is a distraction.
Yeah.
And that distracts you from what your mind really wants
Yeah.
to tell you. Because you're constantly responding and reacting and serving the world around you. You're
Yeah.
constantly, in a way, letting everything outside contaminate what's inside.
Yeah.
So I actually think that, there's a lot of talk about reducing social media time
Yeah.
and things like that. But really, that's what's happening. All that noise is distracting, and
Yeah.
it's diluting what your heart really calls for, what
Yeah.
you really your higher self, how they show up and how they think. So I think that's one, and that includes not even just social media and news and email, but even people around you who might be
It's a tough one.
attached. Yeah, who might be attached to an older version of you.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. They have good intentions, like friends, family, they have
Yeah.
good intentions, but they still know you as their mate who goes out to the pub on Friday nights. That's still,
Yeah.
that's how they've known you. That's who they still want you to be, so that you can do that with them. But if that's holding you back, you've got to remove yourself, or at least limit that noise.
Yeah. I'm giggling about it because I read Gary Vee's latest book, and he talks about, who you surround yourself with, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, if you realize that, in one of those people that you surround yourself with is your mum, and she's really negative or she's toxic, but she's your mum, you love her. But if you're talking to her 10 times a day and she's just only putting negativity because that's just the way she is, then maybe don't talk to her 10 times a day. Maybe talk to her 1 time a day, right? And because that starts to become, and I'm not talking about anyone's mum in particular. What I'm just trying to say is, if there's people in your life that are putting this negativity or things that are not of who you want to be, then you need to change that, right? Because it's kind of like what you put in is what you put out. And it's the same with social media. And I think, especially reflecting in the last 2 years, especially here in Melbourne, for those listening, I think most people would know by now, because I've mentioned it so many times, that we were in lockdown for so long, and not necessarily the highlight, but other than work, is like, naturally we go to the news. Oh, what's the cases today? What's this? And then there's all the anxiety, and then you think, oh, maybe there's a sense of hope, or is it bad news, good news? And all of a sudden, that's now dictating our day. And it's either high or low, and it really has to come back to, well, like, can you control any of this? No, right? And I think that's such an important part of all that, is because the social media, you look at that and you usually it's reflecting on, oh, that person looks like they got this, or look at that success, or you just go down the rabbit hole of just watching useless things. Look, there's plenty of stuff that's really educational and really can be beneficial from it, but at the same time, if it's not helping you get to where you want to be, and then you get to the end of the day and you're making excuses, you're feeling down and feeling fluffy, well, the only person we can blame is ourselves, right? And to that in mind, and we've already started to talk about it, but I guess from that perspective, what are other things? Because we've kind of already touched on, like, how can we pulse check ourselves? We kind of dived into that already, but the next thing I wanted to kind of then validate was things that we can literally do today that can help us move forward in the right direction. And of course, someone can come and speak to you, they can go get coaching, go get help. But I think if anyone's listening right now and they're curious of, like, is there something they can do today, and kind of like, whether it's writing something down to help us kind of say, okay, what can I do today to start me for a better tomorrow? Would you have any recommendations?
Yeah. So the specific recommendations are based off some of the conversations we've already had.
Yeah.
So the first one, creating space in your day.
Yeah.
So that kind of sounds a bit broad, but what I specifically mean by that is to have time in your day where you're not doing something.
Yeah.
Have time in your day where you can actually sit in a bit of stillness, bring out a journal. And many people might not have even had a journal since they were 15 years old, but maybe go get one. And then what you can even ask yourself is, if I were to continue doing what I have for the last month, then where would my life be in 6 months? In 3 years? In 10 years? That's a pretty eye-opening question, because even though I was in a place where I was doing well, but when I asked myself that question, I was like, oh shit, I don't like where it looks like in 10 years time. Even 6 months time, I was like, no, I'm not settling for this, I want more. So that's even a good question to start with in journaling. Another question you can ask yourself in journaling as well was like, who are the top 5 people who are in my world at the moment? So as we talked about before, different people, you know, might share their and project their opinions onto you, which might not help you, because it's more of a reflection of their beliefs and their experiences. So who are the top 5 people in my world right now? That could be people in your real life, could be people in social media as well, because if you're not talking to people in your life every day, but you're following someone and you're reading their posts every day, then they are influencing you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So who are the top 5 people? Are they a good model of who I want to become? Or are they at the level that I want to get to? Yes or no? Or if not, then who can I bring into my top 5 who will lift me up and just pull me to become the person to achieve the things that I have been striving for? So a couple of those questions that you can ask yourself in journaling.
They're really good.
I love those questions. And, you know, they're not even just one-off questions. Ask yourself that. And then in a month's time, ask yourself the exact same question again. You know, check in with yourself.
That's true, because you'll see the result. I mean, I love seeing progress, and I love seeing, like, I'm really data driven, like I love numbers and stuff. And, you know, at the same time, that can work in both, you know, a really good way and a bad way, because I get so stuck on the numbers and I'm like, oh, I'm not hitting this target, or I'm not hitting this number or whatever. But then when you zoom out and you look at the numbers from a different perspective, and I kind of actually posted about this last night, and you reflect and you take that perspective view, and you're like, it's not actually really that bad, and look how much you've done. And I think the one that resonates the most with me is, writing down, if I continue to do this for the next 30 days, the next 6 months, the next year, 2, 5, whatever, what does my life look like? Because I think when people actually dedicate some time to it, and it's probably not like a 2-minute thing, right? You kind of have to, you know, dig a little deeper. But I think if you do that, you will probably have quite an awakening and realize you're either loving what you're doing, or there's some things there that you need to change. And it's the reason why I say it so much is because I think about, you know, I've spoken about this on another episode as well, is if it's not leading towards where you want to be, then you've only got really one option, is either you have to suck it up and keep doing it, and then you continue to be sad, or you have to make a change. That's the only thing. No one else is going to do it for you. And as tough and raw and, you know, aggressive or blunt that's the reality. Because, you know, anyone can come to you, say, Trang, I need some help, you know, this is what I'm not doing. But if they're not willing to take the action, take the change, you know, do whatever they need to do to make that change, then you're not going to change them. You're just going to give them, this is what you need to think about. This is, you know, the different pillars you need to focus on. And how do we start to fix this one? How do we fix this one? But it really does, coming full circle, come back to that whole mindset shift, really, because you can go fill out all these things of how you can be a better person tomorrow and what you can do today, but you can write down that all these things. But if you don't do anything about it, then, you know, nothing's going to change. It comes back to the whole thing of luck and opportunity. People think, oh, that person's just so lucky, they've had the silver platter handed to them. It's like, no, they're out there doing the work, you know, like they've put themselves in a situation where maybe they did get handed something, but that's because they had put themselves out for that opportunity, right? And I think we all have the ability to be able to perform at our best, which is what you're all about. But it really does come to actually tapping into understanding, what does that look like and how do you make it happen? Because I'm sorry, no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Now, this is really, really good. And I want to kind of change course again. We've discussed on so much here. And, you know, if anyone, just quick little call out. If anyone wants to ask Trang any questions, please go reach over to her site and stuff, and she'll talk on where you can reach out to her shortly. But I want to finish up with some rapid fire questions, just to get to know you a bit and kind of make it a bit more lighthearted, because we have touched on some quite deepness here and it can be quite overwhelming, but they are very important conversations to have. So with these rapid fire questions, I mean, if you think there's some, extra meat or something that you want to add value with, you can dive into a bit. Otherwise, just try and keep them short and sharp, because I think that's just what makes it fun. So we'll dive into that. And the first one being, which I think you'll probably find it pretty easy, is favorite travel destination.
So anywhere hot or new is generally I love. But if I had to choose one place, probably Vietnam. Okay. My parents are Vietnamese and like I have a Vietnamese background. So that's not the reason why though. I think I have good memories there. I've only been there like once as an adult, and I went there. It was my first overseas holiday with my partner James. So good memories there.
Love it. I have been to Vietnam. I have. It's a bit of a blur now, but yeah, I have been there. Favorite book or audio book that you've read or listened to?
I would say The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma. So by the way, like love a lot of different books, but that one I really loved, and I do go back and reread that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And it's the thing I love about asking this question is you get people that come out with some, different, weird, wonderful things. And, sometimes it's not like, most people think, it's going to be some, how to level up and, self-assessment book or something. And then sometimes people just throw out, oh no, I just like to read, really, they just say novels, right? And that's what I love about it, because we all, take in our information and learning and the things from different way. I haven't heard of the book, but I'm definitely going to suss it out. And for anyone that wants to listen to it or read it, I'll put a link in the description below. The next one is, which is always a fun one to ask, is you win $10,000, no strings attached. What are you doing with it?
Oh my gosh, so many different options. I think my actual response is going to be a little bit boring. I think I would actually put it towards the house that James and I are building at the moment.
Makes sense.
But yeah, that's probably where at this point in my life, that's where it would go to.
No, it's good. And that's why I love to answer it, because obviously it will be different for everyone in different, situations and whatnot. But hey, that's a good priority. And in this day and age, that extra 10,000 will make a big difference in the longer run. So kudos. That's exciting. This one can be quite broad, but how do you like to spend your free time? And you've touched on that you like to do a lot of sports stuff. I've seen on Instagram things that you like to do, but for the audience, what do you like to spend how do you like to spend your free time?
So when I'm not like chilling out and sitting on the couch cuddling my dogs, what I do like to do, my theme for this year, how you start the year and you have a theme for the year of how you want to evolve into, has been adventure. Okay. So that's been my big thing at the moment, like hiking, camping, scuba diving. Got my certification last month. Yep. And kind of getting outdoors and doing things that are a bit uncomfortable, but at the same time are beautiful, because you're in nature and you're literally removing yourself from noise. It's just birds and just rustling of leaves out there. So
okay. And then to further that, do you have any hobbies? Like, I always love asking this question, is because outside of what we show and what we see, and I've seen you've been adventuring quite a lot. That's been pretty cool. But do you have any weird and wonderful hobbies that you do on the side? And you don't have to share if it's weird.
So I do have hobbies. It's funny when you asked that, Chris, the first thing that came to mind was going to EDM music festivals.
Okay, fair enough.
That's something that people would not expect, because I share all the conscious, like reflective, like coaching parts of myself, but then I also just love to go to a good rave, and that's something that I think I will continue to do for a long time when they do come around.
No, that's good. That's what I wanted to hear, that weird and wonderful thing that people don't expect. No, that's great. If you could have coffee with anyone from the past or present, who and why?
Oh, such a good question, this one. It's actually a really tough one.
It is.
The first person who comes to mind, though, would actually be my grandpa, because he passed 10 years ago, and over the last 10 years, just so much has happened that I would just love to share with him and yeah, like talk about.
No, that's really sweet. And once again, I love this because I've had answers from Jesus to, like, you know, some of the big celebs to then family members as well, right? And that's what
Yeah.
I love about it, is because it would be very hard to do. And every time I ask the question, I'm still thinking who I would be, because there's probably too many. But no, I really appreciate the honesty on that one. And the last one, which is kind of a tough one, well, it might not be, but it can speak, you know, volumes, is advice you would give your younger self, or maybe teenage self.
I would say, and this sounds super cliche, but what I think I really needed to hear when I was a teenager was do what you want to do. Like follow your heart. But the thing is, it's not like anyone told me what I needed to do at that age. It was just still, I was still within a glass ceiling. Like I still chose what I wanted to do, but with limits, with strings attached almost. But then I wish that I had known like what I'm doing now. It's just like, open that up, like open that glass ceiling and that box up to anything and everything. It's your life. You can choose whatever you want to do.
It's one of those cliche kind of things. It's like, you know, if I knew what I knew now, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, at the same time, I always resonate with this because, you know, if you had asked me 5 years ago that this is what I'll be doing, you know, reselling and doing a podcast, it's not what I would have thought, right? Let alone 5, 10, 15 years ago. But at the same time, I've always known that I wanted to, you know, do my own thing, you know, work for myself and help other people further their life. Maybe at the time it wasn't further your life, but help others, you know, achieve their own life, right? But you don't know what that looks like. And it's one of those catch-22s, right? Because if we didn't go through the journey that we've gone through, we wouldn't be able to be here. But you know, if we actually knew what we knew then, you know, we probably actually wouldn't be doing now. We would be doing what we're probably doing in another 10, 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, because we would be ahead. So it's a weird thing, because progress is so good and so important, but you can only appreciate it until you kind of got some behind you, right? You know, you can look ahead and you see all these people, and I get frustrated with it. You see the greats, you see the successful people, and we're all successful regardless, you know. But the cliches of success, if we see these people have built big businesses, or, you know, they're the top YouTubers or people, you know, top coaches, you know, to speak into your relevance. And we look and think, oh, they've made it look so easy, right? Or, you know, they did this in 10 years. But usually when we're looking at this, you know, we're only 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, you know, you can't compare. But when you get to that point, it's like, even now, you being 1 year in, there's probably people looking at you thinking, oh, you know, how did you do all this? How do you do everything? How did you make that happen? Right. And you look back and you can kind of just take a moment and think, you know, like you have that sense of you've made it, even though you haven't, but like you have, right? In that sense, in that small time frame. And it really comes down to putting in that work, but that progress, you learn to appreciate it so much. Right. And that's probably been the big takeaway that I've taken from all this is, you know, if you want something, you have to do something about it. But, you know, having you actually help us understand that, you know, there are certain things in our life, you know, I guess that holistic model that we need to put things into place. We need to have the hard conversations with ourselves and be willing to, you know, find out what we have to leave at the door, right? If we want to make that change. And it's been a very deep conversation. And it might actually be the same answer that I'm about to ask you, but if you could leave anything with the audience that are listening, you know, one thing from this podcast, what would that be?
I would say, similar along those wavelengths. But, you know, the final thing to ponder on or to sit on is think of your dreams and reality, not as separate things, but as the same thing. Because you know how people say things like, oh, you got to gone on holiday. Now I'm back at work. So I'm back in reality now. And it's like, oh, you know, I want to do this as a job. Oh, no, you got to be realistic. But it's like, what is reality? Like reality is only ever the meaning and the way that we choose to perceive things. You know, that's as humans, everything in our entire reality is first processed by us. So whatever you think is reality, you can set the bar really low and just settle for that. Or you can make your reality the same as your dreams.
So good. Could do a
yeah.
whole podcast on this.
I know that it's a huge thing. So go get out there and do it, like don't think that I need to be realistic. Follow your dreams.
That's it. I love it. I could speak about that for ages. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? If they want to know about you on a daily basis or your business, where's the best place to find things all thing Trang?
The best place to find me would be on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. So at Trang Nguyen. Now the spelling of that, I'm sure Chris, you put that in the podcast description. And I also do have my own podcast as well, which is simply called the Aligned Performance Podcast.
Love it. It's so good. And go check out and see what she's doing. Because, of course, yes, she's doing things and you can work with her if that's what you need. But just your posts, the way you share your life, it's just encouraging. It's uplifting. It's positive. And, I think the ones that I love the most is, seeing those little adventures that you do and how that resonates, with different people in different ways. But I think it was you posted one the other day. You were trying to do, handstands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I loved about it was that, you're doing things that you're not at the top in your field at, you're not the pro at, you're not the best at. And it means you have to start at the bottom. And what that really resonates with me is that, because in other elements, if you look onto your page, you are very successful. You've got so many things that are going for you. You've got so many things where you're at the top of your game. And obviously there's always people ahead of you. But what I'm saying is you're doing really, really good. But then for you to then go back down into a place where no one knows who you are, what you're about, or what you're capable of doing, but you're basically just at zero with them and you put them on the same playing field. And I kind of love it. It's kind of like that undercover boss kind of situation, they go in and they don't know who their boss is. And then, but it's a really cool thing to do. And I think it's quite encouraging to see, because a lot of the time we are always trying to, build out our current situations, our current levels. But maybe to do that, we have to start back down somewhere else and just learn that new skill or take a different understanding of something, because that will help us see what we do on a daily basis in a whole different realm. And that resonated with me. Anyway, I get off topic. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor, and privilege to have the conversation with you. And the hour has flown by. So people go check out Trang, go see what she's doing. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I've had a blast. I can't believe that's been an hour.
I know.
It felt like 20 minutes. Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do as well. Love what you're doing and the inspiration that you are spreading out there as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, awesome. You have a wonderful day. And for those that are listening, I'll wrap it up in a quick summary now. Cheers. So there you go. Another super exciting episode. And what I love about this episode so much, and I've kind of already discussed it as we wrapped up there with Trang, but essentially that if you want something, it really comes down to what are you willing to do about it? And you can go through getting help from someone like Trang and going through some coaching and getting some transformation help. But at the same time, I think what was really, really encouraging to me from Trang was, asking yourself some of the tough questions, especially the one around, sitting down and actually thinking what I've been doing for the last 30 days. If I continue to do this for the next 30 days, if I continue to do this for the next 6 months, if I continue to do this for the next year, 2 years, 5 years, what does my life look like? And I think that's the really important takeaway for myself, is to helping you keep rooted to where you want to be. And if you do struggle with knowing, you don't know what you want, or you don't know where you want to be, or you have ideas of where you want to be, and you do need that help, then do reach out, do have the conversation with Trang. You can hit her up on her socials. Otherwise, you can reach out to myself. I'm more than happy to continue that conversation. But at the end of the day, if you do need help, do ask. Otherwise, go through some of these exercises that we've discussed today and see if that can help you get closer to where you want to be, and see if that can help you start that transformation process. I'm really, really thankful and grateful to have Trang on this episode, and I'm looking forward to having more conversations with her in the future as well. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, do go reach out and send a message to Trang, say hi, and if you are new to her audience as well. Otherwise, you have a wonderful day. Cheers. Now, if you didn't know, we do have the podcast merch, and this is with a key focus of enamel pins. Now, if you haven't checked these out, make sure you do, because the intent of these are really just to be a small token and a reminder for you to charge on, to push on, and to further your lifestyle. Whether it is a gift for someone else to encourage them, or maybe to inspire them, or maybe it's a way to motivate yourself, or you can simply just make a purchase to simply support the podcast, which would be greatly appreciated. We do also have some sweaters and some long tees, so make sure you check it out. Link in the description and in the show notes. Really do appreciate it. Cheers.